Good evening and welcome to KTN Prime. This evening we begin with a question. Will it be 800,000 or 500,000? Those are the numbers the Parliamentary Service Commission and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission are negotiating.
The two commissions have been locked up in the meeting since 4 p.m. this afternoon, talking over the hot-button issue that has isolated members of the National Assembly from the public. It is also the evening drug traffickers have been placed on notice, with President Uhuru Kenyatta issuing a directive to deport them.
We will also bring you the heartbreaking story of 4 students taken too soon by a grisly road accident. Welcome to this live broadcast. My name is Eric Njoka.
I'm Linda Goto. Here is a look at the top stories we have lined up for you tonight.
The enemy within. Policemen caught with Ivory in camp.
For all foreigners who are either suspected of having engaged in issues to deal with drug trafficking, be deported and they go back to their own countries and do their business there.
Tackling drug lords, President Uhuru's prescription.
Nikamuuliza wewe ni nani? Si ni ngumi, ndugu yangu. Maana nafika anaambia who are you? Who are you?
One woman, 2 men. Will the real husband please stand up?
And Killer Gangs from the West, our special series begins. Many thanks for joining us on KTN Prime. Now, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has been locked up in a meeting with the Parliamentary Service Commission over pay for members of Parliament. This is the first official meeting between the two commissions in efforts to resolve a standoff that has seen members of Parliament go without pay for 3 months. We're now joined live by our senior reporter, Asha Mwilu, who has been following up on this development. Asha, does it look like the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is bowing to pressure from the members of Parliament? What was discussed today?
Well, Linda, bowing to pressure is a little too strong, but we do know that developments reaching us is that there has been a meeting since early this evening at around 4 p.m. between the Salaries and Remuneration Commission and the Parliamentary Service Commission. The agenda, as we know, the contentious salary debate that has put the country at a standstill in terms of the 11th Parliament moving along with progress with the bills and everything. We understand that the Parliamentary Service Commission was led by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, as well as the Clerk of the National Assembly. MPs have been demanding to have their salaries readjusted back to the 800,000 shillings enjoyed by the 10th Parliament because they don't want the 500,000 shillings. In fact, we do know that MPs have refused to pick their salaries for the last 3 months, leaving the Parliamentary Service Commission at a very awkward position, having now to renegotiate this salary with the SRC Commission. When we spoke to the SRC chairperson, Sarah Serem, yesterday, she told us that no deal has been reached yet, and as of now, no white smoke from that meeting. We know this is coming on the eve when the civil society has planned a massive protest, the second protest against this demand by legislators to have their salaries increased. And we do know that economists have been warning that the ballooning wage bill in Kenya is now at the red zone. So tomorrow we understand that the civil society from 12 p.m. will have an even bigger protest than the big protest that we saw a couple of months back. Linda.
Asha, this meeting has been going on for quite a while now. What are some of the contentious issues? Of course, we know the members of Parliament have maintained that 500,000 is too little for them to take home. What other issues are they raising about this?
Well, we do know that what the MPs are putting on the table is that they want their salaries back to 800,000 shillings, but they are willing to have some of their allowances readjusted perhaps. But Sarah Serem says that her team is now between a rock place and a rock and a hard place, because when they were reviewing salaries of all civil servants, they had to go through an entire structure. And so now adjusting one job group where the MPs fall will now mess the entire structure. And the exact words that Sarah Serem used yesterday when we had a phone interview with her was that this will even affect the president's salary. So we do know that this meeting, probably an agreement could not be reached tonight. Hopefully by tomorrow, before the civil society hits the street again, we probably will have a white smoke from their end.
Asha Mwilu speaking to us from our newsroom. Thank you so much, Asha Mwilu, giving us the developments that took place. The Parliamentary Service Commission was meeting the Salaries and Remuneration Commission team, and they are looking to work on the salaries of members of Parliament. Of course, this has been an issue that has been in the public domain as well. Sarah Serem maintaining that the country cannot afford to pay members of Parliament 800,000 shillings that they want. The country can only afford 500,000. Let's see how this goes, because Asha Mwilu says this has a trickle-down effect. If this is changed and they get the 800 that they want, then indeed the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will have to readjust the salaries of public servants. Of course, that is a development you're following for you. Let's bring in Joker.
Well, thank you very much, Linda. And it's actually going to be a very long week for the parliamentarians and also for the whole country to just observe what our members of Parliament are going to do. To our life matters now, and on an administration police officer and his civilian accomplice were this afternoon arrested after being found in possession of 40 kilograms of ivory. The two were arrested at the administration police camp in Kawangware. KTN's Rita Tinina reports on this new development in the war against poaching.
At the Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters, a display of the latest find in the war against illegal ivory trade. 2 elephant tusks weighing 40 kilograms. And this time, the ivory, which was cut into pieces, was recovered in an unusual place, the Kawangware Administration Police Camp.
The ivory was hidden in the AP camp, but people could not believe that.
The suspects, an administration police officer and a civilian, fell for a trap set by KWS officers posing as potential buyers.
We did not expect an ivory to be hidden in an AP camp. So that's the reason we told them, just go and bring it if you are willing to sell. And their people posted as a buyer. When they brought the ivory, they were arrested.
The two transported the ivory from the AP camp right into the hands of KWS officers using this vehicle, which was impounded and will form part of the exhibit when the two are arraigned in court. The two suspects are said to have offered to sell each kilogram of the ivory for 10,000 shillings. They will spend the night at the Langata police station and are due to be arraigned at the Kibera law courts on Tuesday. In a separate incident, a woman found in possession of processed ivory was also arrested in the Westlands area of Nairobi.
And they are weighing about 4 kilos. And she's being brought for further interrogation. Then after that, we'll book her to the police and then she will defend herself in court tomorrow.
Cases of poaching have recently been on the increase. Last year alone, 360 elephants and 19 rhinos were killed. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Right, 4 children were this morning killed in a road accident at Mawingu area along the Olkalau Njambeni Road. And what happened in that story, that a pickup heading to Kipipiri first hit a Form 1 student who was riding a bicycle, causing it to lose control and hit the other 3 pupils who were walking by the roadside.
All 4 died on the spot. 2 of the students who perished were siblings. 3 were primary school pupils from St. Peter's Primary School, while the Form 1 student was from Green Hills Academy in Mawingu town.
Following the incident, locals held a demonstration and barricaded the busy road with logs, causing a major traffic snarl-up. Residents say they want bumps to be erected on the busy road.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed the police to deport any foreigners involved in drug trafficking business in the country.
The president has told police to crack down on all drug traffickers, including the local agents.
And as KTN's Angel Katusi reports, the president's directive comes just days after 20 foreign nationals were deported with allegations of their involvement in drug business.
Nataka mimi sasa nifanye mimi nimwangalie, lakini sasa kuhusu Arosto Noma huwezi kuvumilia.
KTN aired a special feature on prostitution and drug use at the coast in February. Stories of how drugs have enslaved young men and women at the coast. Women who are led to prostitution rings in forest just so they could earn a few shillings to buy drugs. The story exposed how easy it was to access and use drugs in the country.
What a problem, and a big problem with the young people. With the young people, you take alcohol and you don't learn.
A few months after, KTN's Perspective show exposed how deeply rooted the problem of alcoholism in central Kenya is. Young men and women of potential turning into alcohol zombies. The two cases exemplifying just how huge the problem of drugs and alcohol abuse is. It is against this background that President Uhuru Kenyatta called on the police to intensify the war on drugs.
And I have already given an order that any or all foreigners who are either suspected of having engaged in issues to deal with drug trafficking be deported and they go back to their own countries and do their business there. They don't need to be here.
This year's NACADA conference theme, dubbed The Youth and Drugs, is a call to action for the same youth who at times abuse these substances to finally let go of these habits.
As I have said, Your Excellency, your act or that of your government of declaring a national disaster, alcohol and drug abuse, will save lives.
The directive by the president comes just days after 20 foreigners were deported to their countries with allegations they were involved in drug trafficking businesses. However, critics argue there are Kenyan drug barons who have not yet been prosecuted. Documented reports in the country have linked prominent Kenyan personalities, including politicians, to drug businesses. Angel Katuse, KTN Prime.
So President Uhuru Kenyatta has directed police to deport any foreigners involved in drug trafficking. Because tonight we're asking you, do you think deporting foreign traffickers will end drug trade?
Well, you heard the president. Do you think deporting foreign traffickers will end drug trade? Send your comments to the number 8040. You can as well tweet us at KTN Kenya, at Eric Njoka KTN, and at Linda Ogutu. Will sample your views during this live newscast.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime and for staying with us. Let's now cross borders to South Africa, and former South African president and anti-apartheid hero Nelson Mandela is still in hospital for the third day with the lung infection, and his condition has not changed from serious but stable.
In a statement, President Jacob Zuma repeated his call for the country to pray for the ailing 94-year-old.
Mandela's daughters have been seen leaving the hospital after visiting their ailing father, having reportedly spent time with him at his bedside.
Social networking site Twitter has alight with comments from well-wishers in South Africa and across the world, many talking about Mandela's legacy.
In South Africa, hundreds gather to pray for the former president who celebrates his 95th birthday next month.
Mandela has been hospitalized several times in recent months. The last discharge came on April 6th after doctors diagnosed him with pneumonia and drained fluid from his chest. Back home, at least 15 people are nursing injuries following Sunday's grenade attacks in Nairobi and Likoni in Mombasa. The attack in Mombasa County took place at the Earthquake Church compound at around 7 p.m, while here in Nairobi, the blast was reported an hour later. Betty Kialo with the details.
A church service at the Earthquake Miracle Ministries that turned deadly. 12 worshippers and their leaders injured while they went about their Sunday prayers.
Niliposikia mfuko, mimi nikaanguka chini. Sasa kuanguka hivi, nilikuwa nimeumia mkono, alafu kifua. Sasa niliposimama hivi, kila mtu alikuwa anapiga duru.
Officers from the anti-terrorism police unit collecting any evidence that could give a lead to just who was behind the attack. The injured were rushed to the Coast General Hospital, bloodied and fighting for dear life. Reports indicate that more worshippers were wounded in a stampede and in a fire that broke after the explosion. According to Mombasa Police Boss Agri Adoli, no arrests have been made. However, preliminary investigations indicate the explosive device could have been a homemade bomb.
We are still following up the leads because, as you know, this area is so much crowded
and we have just gotten some kind of information that whoever was the assailant through this particular device, through the other houses within the slums, and therefore he was not easily identified.
Here in Nairobi, yet another attack, this time at a shop in Eastleigh's Majengo estate. In this incident, a woman and 2 men were injured and are currently receiving treatment at the Kenyatta National Hospital. While it's not clear whether the 2 attacks were connected, police in both cities have launched investigations to look into the same. Residents of Eastleigh, however, lamented that the emergence of a criminal gang has rendered the area insecure.
Kunakuwa na wasiwasi hata ukiwa kwa nyumba kwa sababu vijana wameharibika wetu.
Last evening's incidents raised concerns of renewed terrorism in the 2 cities after months of lull. Betty Kialo, KTN.
And still on insecurity, later on in this bulletin, Patrick Amimo will be bringing you the killer gangs of Western Kenya. Of course, if you have been following this story, you will realize that there have been several attacks in Western Kenya. He will be trying to figure out who has been attacking the residents and why. So you need to watch out for that story. Now, the High Court is tomorrow expected to make a ruling on whether or not the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission report can be tabled before the National Assembly. 7 civil rights activists led by Kiriro Wangogi and Michael Chepkwony have moved to court seeking to block the tabling of the TJRC report. The activists argue that the TJRC did not comply with its mandate when it compiled its report. Through their lawyer Kioko Kilukumi, the activists claim the TJRC report violates various articles of the Constitution. The case is being heard by High Court Judge Justice Isaac Lenaola. The TJRC report, which was handed over to President Uhuru last month, is due to be tabled before the National Assembly this week.
Residents of Kisauni area in Mombasa were treated to an early morning drama when 2 men clashed at the home of a woman.
All right, so both men were claiming to be the bona fide husband of the woman. According to the men, neither of them had met before today when they fought for the woman. And as Ferdinand Omondi reports, locals believe the woman has been playing wife to both men behind their backs. Take a look.
Drama at Barsheba area of Kisauni in Mombasa. An irate woman and a man nursing a nasty gash above the eye. Poor Mwakio showed up early in the morning at what he believed was his house to see his child and his wife, only to receive a rude shock. The other man, who also claims to be the real husband, says he too arrived at his wife's house only to be shocked at the presence of another man.
Kufika ndani nikamkuta mtu kakaa katika kochi. Sasa mimi hapa nilishtuka sana.
What followed naturally was a territorial cockfight.
Nikamuuliza, wewe ni nani?
Si ni ngumi ndugu yangu. Maana nafika anaambia who are you, who are you, who are you?
Ikabidi mimi nimshike mimi kama mwanaume. Nikamshika sawa sawa.
And this was the result: a bloodied face, a shattered window, and blood-stained clothes. The woman at the center of the controversy, however, denies any relationship with Mwakio.
Na nilimpatia warning, nimekataa. Amekataa, hasikii. Kila wakati anasimama pale chochora akinitumia watu. Na mimi siendi.
The neighbors have a different version of her story. Many insist that Mwakio has been a regular visitor here.
Anafukuzwa akiambiwa ni mwizi, na tukiangalia ni mtu ambaye zaidi ya miaka 2 tunajua ako na relationship na huyu mama.
Majirani hata ukiwauliza hawa ambao unawaona hawa, wanaomjua huyu hapa, mnamjua vizuri sana. Hii relationship imekuwa kwa kitambo sana.
Apparently, Swale has been married to her for 16 years and has 5 children with her. He says he's usually away on business.
Hata hivi mimi nitafanya kuchunguza kibakini sana haya. Nimesikia uchungu sana. Hivi sasa ndio nasikia aibu kubwa.
Mwakio, if he is to be believed, came into the picture 2 years ago, believing she was a single mother and has been paying the rent. Now he claims he is the father of the youngest child. The residents, both amused and bemused, watched on, wondering what to make of the situation.
Kina mama tuacheni mpango wa kando. Kina mama wacheni mpango wa kando.
On one hand, it's kind of a funny story, really. On the other hand, it raises questions yet again on the decadence of moral fabric and family virtues in society, particularly when people are willing to justify the phenomenon that is mpango wa kando.
Mpango wa kando hatuwezi kuacha, lakini tutavaa condom. Wanake wapenda pesa, hata kujua huyu mume wa mtu wala si mume wa mtu. Bora tu atongozwe. Akitongozwa akionyesha noti basi mchezo yuauachia.
Ferdinand Mundi, KTN, Barsheba, Kisauni, Mombasa.
Someone has a lot of explaining to do in that story. Now, let's focus our attention on our big question tonight. We're focusing on drug trafficking. And tonight we're asking you, do you think deporting foreign traffickers will end drug trade in the country?
Well, you know the trend now. Send your comments to the number 8040 or our Twitter page at KTN Kenya, at Eric Njoka KTN or at Linda Oguta, and we'll sample them at the end of this live newscast. You're indeed watching KTN Prime, and just ahead.
Head on KTN Business today, Treasury confirms that Thursday, the 13th of June, will be the D-Day for budget statements to be read in Parliament. We also tell you how the ambitious 1 million acre irrigation plan by the government is taking shape. All these only on KTN Business today, right ahead.
Thank you very much for staying with KTN. Welcome back to KTN Prime. And just before the break, we had asked you, do you think deporting foreign traffickers will end drug trade? A few comments from Twitter here. Jackton Omukoko, you say, if that is the case, what will happen to our own drug lords? Then another one here from Wairati Sam, you say, still on Twitter, yes, it will. There won't be immediate management of the business, hence easier to catch local peddlers. Keep sending them on our number 8040 and also our Twitter handle at KTN Kenya. Moving on, for over a month now, residents of some of the villages in Busia and Bungoma counties that were terrorized by faceless gangs remain terrified and hardly spend the night at home. They have found refuge in sugar and maize fields for fear of attacks that killed 24 people and left hundreds injured. In the first part of our series on the killer gangs of Western Kenya, our reporter Patrick Amimo looks at the plight of victims and the motive of the killer gangs.
On the wee hours of Labor Day, a group of about 30 gangsters raided Akwabait and Benga villages, and within 24 hours, 4 people were left dead and 15 injured. Majority of residents of the villages of Benga, Akwabait and Amarkwai, all in Busia County, were enjoying their sleep before the attackers interrupted their peace. The gangsters spread terror in the 3 villages almost simultaneously, hacking their victims with machetes and other crude weapons. Most of the victims suffered deep cuts on their heads, hands and necks. Even women who encountered the thugs were not spared either, as the gang unleashed terror under the cover of darkness. Daniel Munyekenye, who is a welder, was asleep inside his workshop. He says the gangsters attacked his next door neighbor, whom they slashed and left for dead.
Nilisikia watu wakiongea nje na wakitembea kwa sauti zaidi wakigonga viatu, ndio nikaamuka.
The thugs inflicted fatal injuries on his neighbor. They never stole anything from him. According to residents, the attack lasted for over 20 minutes.
Ilibidi nimulike tochi ambayo nilikuwa nayo na nikaona chuma fulani, nikajaribu kuishika, lakini wakati nilikuwa napiga nduru, nilishiwa na nguvu na chuma yenyewe ikaanguka kutoka kwa mkono.
Kulikuwa na komanda mmoja mwenye alikuwa anasema operation.
Hao watu walikutana na maaskari baada ya kuruka mtoni ya Walazi. Sasa vile walikutana na maaskari, wakauliza hapa kuna police station karibu. Askari wakaambia sisi ndio maaskari wapo. Vile walisikia hivyo wakatorokea kwa miwa. Kama wangekuja na umbwa, at least hao watu tungewapata.
Some of the victims of the vicious attacks in Busia County are still recuperating in hospital. A frail-looking 30-year-old Alice Nafuna was overpowered by the thugs, who left her with permanent scars and without one hand. Her husband was killed.
Kaanza kunipiga hapa panga. Kumaliza hapa tena walikuwa wanarudisha, ninaweka mkono.
Hata wakati nililetwa huko mimi mwenyewe sikuelewa. Nilipofika hapa nilimaliza kitu 1 week. Nikaelewa niko wapi.
The killer gangs also spread terror in neighboring Bungoma County almost simultaneously. Here, they killed 4 people and injured 70 others from different villages. The thugs moved in groups of between 20 to 30 and were armed with crude weapons. Unlike in Busia, residents of Kikwechi village in former Sirisia constituency revealed that the attackers used a woman to lure their victims.
Mwanamke alikuwa mmoja. Yeye ndiye alikuwa anakimbia akipika nduru. Akisema mwizi ndio huyu akipika mpira. Kumbe ilikuwa mpira, nikafikiria mwizi wameshika. Vile niliamka kuwauliza ako wapi, alafu mwingine anaanza kunikata, akanikata mkono, tena ndiye akaanza kunikatakata kwa kichwa.
Residents are now living in fear.
Juzi tena tulipata habari wamerudi wakakata hapa umbwa karibu 2 usiku. Sasa tunahofia usalama hapa.
Sasa tunaishi na hofu, wengi tunalala nje. Hakuna kulala usingizi, ukisikia tu umbwa sikibweha.
In Bungoma County, there is a heavy police presence with officers conducting night patrols. Despite that, the killer gang sneaked into Bungoma town that is heavily patrolled one early evening and killed a businessman. And even at the height of the killings, politicians continued to point fingers at each other in what appears to be a battle for supremacy.
Upande wa Kikwechi kuna mtu ambaye alipeana pesa shilingi 1,100 kwa vijana waende kufanya hii kazi na amejulikana. I will announce them. Tutaweka I will announce them because I know them. Where is the government and what is it doing? Kama watu wanajulikana. Where is it and what is it doing? Wa kwanza kuuawa kwa hii round ya ujambazi alikuwa ni jirani yangu. Mita 300 kutoka kwangu kwenda kwake. Alikuwa chief campaigner wangu.
Some residents suspect the attacks could be fueled by pending election petitions.
Ikiwa ni wanasiasa, tafadhali enda mkashike yule mwanasiasa ambaye alikuwa anafanya mpango. Ningependa tuachie mahakama ya mtu asitumie hiyo kwa njia yoyote atuwaumize watu wetu.
Waluke na mimi tulikuwa na petition yenye tulisukumana miaka 5. Hakuna hata mtu alipigana ngumi au kofi kwa sababu ya petition. Kwa hivyo wale ambao wanasema kwa sababu tuna petition watu wanakuwa na shida ni mambo ya upuzi.
As far as our petitions are concerned, there is no political link into all this. We are treating this as a criminal, attacks.
In our attempt to discover what went wrong in the land of Mulembe, which translates to peace in Luya dialect, we managed to squeeze interviews from 3 people who said they had been recruited by a politician for an undisclosed assignment. They said they defected after realizing they will be co-opted into killer gangs.
Mwanasiasa alituapproach mimi na marafiki zangu wengine kama walikuwa wanapenda siasa, ya kwamba atupeleke mahali tuwe kama kikundi fulani ambacho kinaweza kuwa kufanya madhara kwa wananchi. Ametuambia ametupea shilingi 1,100 ili tusaidie huko, alafu tukue kwa mchana, tukue kwa mafunzo. Na hiyo shughuli walikuwa wameleta wakanga wa makazi marefu, hata sijui wanakaa namna gani. Wengine wanaonekana kama wa Nigeria, wengine wanakaa, wengine hata siwajui, walikuwa karibu watu 4 5. Wakamaliza kuchinja kondoo, wakatuweka tena kuku, wakachinja kuku, wakatoa matumbo, wakasogea dawa, wakatupa kwa maji. Hata sasa sisi tukienda tukitenda, sisi hatutajulikana.
That sums up the general insecurity in Western Kenya. In our second part of the series, we look at the origin and motive of terror gangs in Western Kenya. Reporting for KTN, I'm Patrick Amimo.
All right, look out for the second part of that series, The Killer Gangs of Western Kenya, with Patrick Amimo. Time for another break, and just ahead is business.
KTN Sports today. We'll give you the updates on AFC Leopards Elections Watch, and of course more on rugby partnerships in the country and more on the World Cup qualifiers. All that on KTN Sports today.
All foreigners who are either suspected of having engaged in issues to deal with drug trafficking be deported and they go back to their own countries and do their business there. They don't need to be here. And those are actions that we are going to take, because those are actions that we can take and we must take.
Thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Let's take a look at business news. Oil marketing firm Kenal Kobil has been suspended from the oil tendering committee by the Ministry of Energy. The listed market, according to letters seen by KTN Business Today, was suspended over non-payment of its dues to the Kenya Petroleum Refinery Limited. The letter, signed by the outgoing permanent secretary in the Ministry of Energy, Patrick Nyoike, Kenal Kobil owes the refinery over $14.4 million or close to 1.2 billion shillings that it must pay before being allowed back to the tendering process. The firm was also directed to uplift all of its products from the refinery. Kenal Kobil have over the last 4 years had a back and forth accusation with the refinery over amounts each owe the other. Now, in 4 days, the 1.6 trillion shilling 2013-2014 budget statement will be tabled on the floor of the August House. However, analysts are faulting National Treasury for such a huge borrowing to finance the budget. Adelaide Changole kicks off a week-long budget agenda coverage with this report.
Budget 2013-2014 in association with ICEA Lion Group.
With a gaping deficit to fill in the next financial year, analysts at PKF say the heavy borrowing required to plug the deficit could have an adverse impact on the economy.
We do feel that if this happens, then you're going to deny the business community the funds to borrow from the banks, and this is going to push the interest rates high. So the government ought to sort of manage its resources in a very prudent way.
They are also urging the government to prioritize infrastructure projects, especially those needed to actualize the country's Vision 2030 economic blueprint. They say those are key to greater economic growth in the country.
For the economy to continue picking up, those infrastructure projects under Vision 2030 will have to be funded sufficiently.
Treasury must also overhaul the country's outdated tax regime to net extra income and increase compliance. PKF also wants the country to reintroduce the capital gains tax, saying it could go a long way in bridging the budget deficit, in addition to rationalizing the tax regime that burdens the country's poor while exempting the rich.
There's absolutely no reason why a person living in Kibera shouldn't pay VAT on bread, which is really a basic necessity for him to survive. And for a rich person disposing of his house, plot, hotel, shares in a company, not to pay taxes.
The element that relates to capital growth, in other words, it's not just profits, but actual capital growth, could easily be $1 billion to $1.5 billion. In Kenya shillings, that's over 100 billion shillings.
The analysts also say that the government must open new export markets away from the traditional markets in Europe and US so as to capitalize on the high economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa. The country's tax regime has received a lot of flack over the years for being complex and outdated. With the ever-rising budgetary needs, time has come to overhaul it and put in place a simpler and friendlier system that is easier to comply with. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
Watch out for the continued coverage of the 2013-2014 budget on KTN tomorrow. Now, the Ministry of Agriculture has identified land in the expansive Galana area to be placed under irrigation as indicated in the Jubilee Manifesto. Now, according to Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Felix Kosgei, the parcel in Galana will contribute towards the 1 million acre envisaged by the government. According to the Cabinet Secretary, an initial 250 million shillings will be set aside for crop production in the area. Additionally, Kosgei also asked private sector players to partner with the government in the project as part of Kenya's consolidation of food security.
Tumeona kwamba tutumie
shamba moja yetu ya shirika moja inaitwa ADC huko Galana iko na eka karibu 1,750,000. Tuchukue 1,000,000 tufanye unyunyizaji huko ili tupande mahindi na itapandwa mara 2 kwa mwaka.
You're watching Business News on KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us. Let's now take a look at the financial markets review.
Right, it's now time for KTN Sports Today. I am Nicholas Mudimba. June the 29th will see Kenya's most popular and successful club head to the polls to elect its new office bearers. The elections will see 10 National Executive Committee members and 3 trustees seek office. The chairman's post has already attracted 7 candidates.
It is now official that AFC Leopards elections will be held on the 29th of this month. And with Nairobi County Speaker Alex Ole Magelo out of contention, the baton will be handed to whoever wins the highly contested post that has attracted over 5 contenders, namely businessman Alan Kasavuli, Dan Mule, Semi Aina outgoing Vice Chairman Walter Onyino, outgoing Secretary General Winston Kitui, Matthew Opora, former Nairobi Mayor George Alado, and a politician from Western Kenya who failed in last general elections is equally eyeing the seat. AFC Leopards Embakasi branch chairman feels the competition is healthy for the club's growth.
Mwengo ni timu kubwa na mahali ambapo iko haifai kuwa hapo, yafaa ikuwe tuna compete na timu hata kama ni kina Kaizer Chiefs, kina DC Mtema.
Outgoing chairman Alex Ole Magelo has announced that he will not be defending his seat to concentrate on his new duty as the Speaker of Nairobi County. And in a departure from the past, this scramble for the vacant seats has brought with it diverse ideas.
Ile itaingia ijalishi utatoka kambi gani, litakuwa ni kuleta all the warring functions together, tukae chini tujadiliane na tupatie ofisi ambayo itaingia tuwaunge mkono ili waweze kuendeleza kazi ya club pamoja.
Whichever candidate will have carried the day on the 29th will have a daunting task ahead, ranging from rampant corruption in terms of ticket sales and sale of merchandise, team's performance, and setting up a functional club secretariat.
Club inapoteza fedha mingi sana. Kwa hivyo tutaangalia mambo ya ticketing, tutaweka mikakati ya kuzuia mtu yote ile asiweze kuprint vitu zozote fake, kwa sababu watu wanapotezea club a lot of cash.
The election for the 10 National Executive Committee members and 3 trustees of the club will be part of the agenda of the annual general meeting of the club on the 29th. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
Let's hope this time, come 29th, the elections will be done peacefully from the AFC Leopards funds. Now, moving on, Unilever Kenya has, through the Omo Extra Fresh variant today, announced its sponsorship deal of the Community Rugby Association worth 5 million shillings. This is largely geared to contribute towards the development of the sport through the training of young players from underprivileged backgrounds aged 19 to 16 years. The Community Rugby Association, which is supported by the Rugby Patron Society, will use the investment to facilitate training, transport to and from training venues and kit for the teams.
What the Patron Society have started, community rugby is usually big in the developed nations. If you go to a country like South Africa or England or even France, community rugby is a big sector of the rugby and the sport development. And here in Kenya, it's very, very important to see Petro Society picking one area which the union had ignored. We've had some excellent results in the 7s. We're looking to improve the 15s, and without looking towards the youngsters, then we are not going to have anything for the future. And this is what this drive is about.
You have been watching KTN Prime, and we thank you for staying with us this far. Let's take a look at our big question reminder before we end this. And we'd ask you if you think deporting foreign traffickers will end drug trade in the country. Let's take a look at how you've polled so far. Right there on your screen, 63% of you say no, 37% of you say yes. Buthenezi says deporting drug laws won't help. They should be locked up at committee for life like they do in China.
Timothy Kamande, you say, I don't think so, because apart from the foreign drug dealers, we still have Kenyans who are involved in drugs. What I think it should be done, all drugs should be prohibited in Kenya. And then finally here, Eunice Gagai, you say, no, not at all. They have their partners within who works for them. Do you also deport them? She says, be hard to those found guilty. Thank you very much for participating in this broadcast tonight. I'm Eric Njoka. Good night.
I'm Linda Gutu. Sleep well.